The August sun beat down mercilessly on Silver Creek, Wyoming, turning the main street into a river of dust and broken dreams. Sarah Whitmore pressed her handkerchief against her nose as another gust of wind sent dirt devils dancing between the weathered buildings. At 22, she'd grown accustomed to the harsh realities of frontier life, but today felt different. Today, desperation had driven her to a place no respectable woman should enter alone. The Silver Spur Saloon stood before her like a monument to everything her mother had warned her against. Through the swinging doors came the sounds of rough laughter, clinking glasses, and the tinny notes of an out-of-tune piano. Sarah took a deep breath, tasting alkali and fear on her tongue, then pushed through the doors. The music stopped. Every head in the dim, smoke-filled room turned toward her. Cowboys, drifters, and gamblers stared at her blue calico dress and clean bonnet as if she were some exotic bird that had accidentally flown into a cave full of bats. "Well, well," drawled a voice from the bar. "Looks like Sunday school let out early." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Sarah lifted her chin, fighting the urge to flee. Her father's life depended on her being here. "I'm looking for someone who knows how to handle a gun," she announced, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "Someone who isn't afraid of the Red Jack gang." The laughter died instantly. Men looked away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks or cards. The name Red Jack carried weight in these parts, the kind that made brave men remember urgent business elsewhere. "You shouldn't be here, miss." The voice came from a corner table, low and gravelly as creek stones. Sarah turned to see a man she hadn't noticed before, sitting alone with his back to the wall. Everything about him spoke of hard miles and harder choices, from the worn leather duster draped over his chair to the Colt .45 resting within easy reach on the scarred table. Jesse Calder had the kind of face that told stories without words. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, pale against sun-darkened skin. His eyes, gray as winter sky, held depth she couldn't fathom. He might have been handsome once, before the war and whatever came after carved those lines around his eyes. "I don't have the luxury of being where I should be," Sarah replied, meeting his gaze. "My father needs help." Jesse studied her for a long moment, then gestured to the empty chair across from him. The other patrons, sensing the dismissal, returned to their diversions with obvious relief. Sarah sat carefully, acutely aware of every eye that still tracked her movements. Up close, she could see the weariness in Jesse's features, the kind that sleep couldn't cure. "Tom Whitmore's daughter," he said. It wasn't a question. "You know my father." "Know of him. Heard his ranch has been having trouble." Jesse took a slow sip of whiskey. "Also heard Red Jack's been making threats about folks who can't pay protection money." Sarah's hands clenched in her lap. "He gave us 3 days. That was 2 days ago. Said if we don't pay, he'll—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Burn you out. Maybe worse." Jesse's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those gray eyes. "What makes you think I'd go against Red Jackie?" "Because you're still sitting here talking to me instead of studying your boots like everyone else." The ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Fair point, but talking's free. Getting shot at costs extra. We can pay, not much, but—" "I don't want your money." Sarah blinked. "Then what?" Jesse leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. "Your father has a reputation for being a decent man. Treats his hands fair, doesn't cheat at cards. Helped folks during the drought of '73. He paused. "The world's running short on decent men." Hope fluttered in Sarah's chest like a caged bird. "You'll help us." "I'll ride out with you. See what's what. Can't promise more than that." "That's more than anyone else has offered." Sarah stood, eager to leave before he changed his mind. "When can you be ready?" "Give me an hour to settle my tab and saddle my horse." Jesse rose too, and Sarah realized he was taller than she'd thought, moving with the controlled grace of a man who'd learned not to make sudden movements. Where should I meet you? By the well at the east end of town. And Mr. Calder, Jesse Calder. He touched the brim of his hat. You sure about this? Miss Whitmore, once we ride out together, folks will talk. Sarah thought of her father, alone at the ranch with only 2 aging cowboys for protection. Let them talk. I've got bigger worries than gossip. Jesse nodded slowly. Fair enough. 1 hour, then. Sarah turned to leave, then looked back. Mr. Calder, thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might be cursing my name before this is over. Outside, Sarah blinked in the harsh sunlight, her heart still racing. She'd done it, found someone willing to stand against Red Jack. The fact that Jesse Calder looked like danger itself was something she'd worry about later. She hurried down the street toward Murphy's general store, needing supplies for the journey home. The familiar smell of pickle brine and leather goods calmed her nerves. Mrs. Murphy looked up from her ledger, eyebrows rising at Sarah's flushed face. Sarah Whitmore, what on earth were you doing in that den of iniquity? What I had to Mrs. Murphy? Sarah began gathering items, ammunition, bandages, dried beef. Father sends his regards. The older woman's expression softened. How is Tom? We heard about the trouble. He's managing. Sarah counted out coins carefully. We'll weather this storm like all the others. Mrs. Murphy added an extra box of cartridges without charging for it. You be careful, child. These are dark times. Back at the well, Sarah waited with growing anxiety. Had she misread Jesse Calder? Was he just another drifter full of whiskey promises? Then she heard it, the steady clop of hooves on packed earth. Jesse appeared leading 2 horses, a rangy bay gelding and a pack mule loaded with bedrolls and saddlebags. He'd traded the duster for a canvas jacket, and a Winchester rifle now rode in a scabbard on his saddle. You came, Sarah said, unable to hide her relief. Said I would. Jesse helped her secure her purchases to the pack mule. It's 40 miles to your place. We'll need to camp tonight if we want to arrive with fresh horses. Sarah nodded, trying not to think about spending a night on the trail with a stranger. I know a spot by Crystal Creek. Good water, some shelter. Lead on, then. They rode out of Silver Creek as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. Sarah felt the weight of eyes on her back, townspeople marking her departure with the mysterious gunman. By tomorrow, the story would have grown in the telling. Tom Whitmore's daughter, riding off with a hired gun. Her reputation, carefully guarded for 22 years, evaporating like morning dew. But reputation wouldn't save her father. Reputation wouldn't stop Red Jack from burning their home, scattering their cattle, destroying everything her family had built over 2 generations. The trail wound through sagebrush and rabbit brush, past red rock formations that looked like ancient sentinels. Jesse rode slightly behind, and Sarah could feel him cataloging every rise and dip in the terrain, every spot where ambushers might hide. How long have you been out here? She asked, needing to break the silence. Came west after the war. Been drifting ever since. Which side? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Does it matter now? His voice carried old pain. Blue, gray, we all bled red. Sarah flushed. I'm sorry. That was thoughtless. No, just honest. For what it's worth, I wore blue. Not that it made me any more righteous than the boys in gray. They rode on as shadows lengthened across the trail. A jackrabbit burst from cover, causing Sarah's mare to shy. She brought the animal under control quickly, earning an approving nod from Jesse. Oh, you handled that horse well. Father made sure I could ride before I could properly walk. Said a woman on the frontier who couldn't handle a horse was like a fish that couldn't swim. Smart man. As darkness approached, they reached Crystal Creek. The spot Sarah remembered from childhood cattle drives remained unchanged, a grove of cottonwoods sheltering a clear pool fed by a trickling stream. Jesse dismounted first, checking the area before nodding for her to follow. They worked in companionable silence, him tending the horses while she gathered wood for a fire. Soon, coffee bubbled in a blackened pot, and the smell of bacon filled the air. "Tell me about Red Jack," Jessie said as they ate. Sarah set down her tin plate. "Jack Morrison came to the territory 2 years ago with about a dozen men, started small, rustling a few head here and there. Now he's got 30 riders and claims he owns the whole valley. The law. Sheriff Daniels is 70 years old and half blind. His deputy." Sarah shrugged. "Let's just say Red Jack's gold spends as good as anyone's." Jessie stared into the fire. "And your father won't pay?" "Can't pay. We lost half our herd to fever last winter. What Red Jack's asking would ruin us." She wrapped her arms around her knees. "But it's not just about money. Father says if decent folks start bowing to men like Red Jack, soon there won't be any decency left at all." "He's right. Also likely to get himself killed." "That's why I need you. Mr. Calder." Jessie looked at her across the fire, and something in his expression made her heart skip. "What makes you think one more gun will make a difference?" "Because you're not just a gun. You're—" Sarah searched for words. "You're someone who still believes decent men are worth saving." The fire crackled between them. "Finally," Jessie said. "Get some rest. We'll reach your place by noon tomorrow." Sarah rolled up in her blankets, listening to the creek gurgle and the horses shift in their hobbles. Above, stars painted the sky in brilliant strokes. Despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the impropriety of it all, she felt safer than she had in days. When she woke at dawn, Jessie had coffee ready and the horses saddled. They ate quickly and were on the trail as the first rays of sun painted the mountains gold. The land grew familiar as they rode. The distinctive flat-topped mesa her mother had called Table Mountain, the stand of aspens where she'd picnicked as a child. Home was close now, and with it, the reality of what they faced. As they crested the final ridge, Sarah's breath caught. Below lay the Whitmore Ranch, the log house her father had built with his own hands. The barn, the corrals. Smoke rose from the chimney, peaceful and ordinary. But Jessie had tensed beside her, hand moving to his gun. "Riders," he said quietly. "Coming from the north." Sarah shaded her eyes and saw them, a dust cloud marking the approach of several horsemen. Her heart sank as she recognized the lead rider's red shirt and black hat. "Red Jack, he's early." Jessie studied the scene with a professional eye. "How many hands does your father have?" "2, Ben Carter and Old Pete, both good men, but not gunfighters." Jessie turned his horse. "There's another way down. Through the canyon. It'll put us behind the barn." "Show me." They backtracked and took the narrow trail Sarah had used for childhood adventures. It was treacherous going, but they reached the valley floor unseen. Jessie dismounted behind a screen of willows. "Stay here with the horses." "I'm coming with you." "No." His voice was flat, brooking no argument. "I need to know you're safe, or I can't do what needs doing." Sarah wanted to protest, but the look in his eyes stopped her. This was the man she'd hired, the one who'd survived war and whatever came after, the one who might be the only thing standing between her father and death. "Be careful," she whispered. Jessie checked his revolver, then disappeared into the shadows of the barn. Sarah gripped the reins of both horses, her palms slick with sweat. From here, she could hear voices, Red Jack's laughter, her father's steady tones. Then, clear as a bell, her father's voice. "I told you, Morrison, I don't have your money, and I wouldn't give it to you if I did." "That's unfortunate. Old man, boys, maybe Mr. Whitmore needs help understanding." "I understand fine." Sarah's heart leaped. Jessie had emerged from the barn, Winchester cradled casually in his arms. He looked relaxed, almost bored, but Sarah saw the coiled readiness in his stance. "This ain't your business, stranger." Red Jack snarled, "No, well, I'm making it my business." Jesse's voice carried across the yard like a physical force. Tom Whitmore's under my protection now. You boys best move along. You're 1 man against 8. 1's all it takes if he knows his business. Jesse shifted the rifle slightly. Question is, which of you wants to find out if I know mine? The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. Sarah held her breath, waiting for the violence to explode. But something in Jesse's manner, that absolute calm certainty, made Red Jack's men exchange nervous glances. Finally, Red Jack spat in the dust. This ain't over. Whitmore, you neither, whoever you are. Name's Calder. Jesse Calder. Remember it, in case you're feeling foolish later. Red Jack's face darkened at the name. Without another word, he wheeled his horse and rode out, his men trailing behind. Only when the dust settled did Sarah emerge from hiding. Her father stood on the porch, looking older than his 55 years but unbowed. When he saw her, relief and reproach warred in his weathered features. Sarah, girl, what have you done? What I had to, Papa. She ran to embrace him, feeling his familiar strength. Just like you taught me. Tom Whitmore looked over her shoulder at Jesse, who was walking the perimeter like a sentry checking his post. That's quite a man you brought home. He believes in helping decent folks. Her father studied Jesse with eyes that had seen their share of hard men. Maybe so, but there'll be a reckoning for this. Sarah, Red Jack won't let it stand. Jesse approached, having satisfied himself about their immediate safety. He's right, Miss Whitmore. This was just the opening move. Tom extended his hand. I'm obliged to you. Mr. Calder, though I suspect my daughter promised you more than we can pay. Your daughter promised nothing I wasn't willing to give. Jesse shook the offered hand. You've got a fight coming. Mr. Whitmore, question is whether you're ready for it. The older man's jaw set with determination. I've been ready since the day I drove my first stake in this ground. This is my land, my home. I'll not be driven off by the likes of Jack Morrison. Jesse nodded slowly. Then we'd best get prepared. They'll be back and in force. As the men began discussing defense plans, Sarah looked out across the valley she'd called home all her life. The peaceful morning had given way to the promise of violence, and she'd been the one to bring it here. But watching Jesse and her father, 2 decent men preparing to stand against the darkness, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and the distant threat of storm clouds. Whatever came next, they would face it together, in this wild, unforgiving land. Sometimes that was all the edge you needed. The morning after Red Jack's visit, Sarah found Jesse already at work, reinforcing the shutters on the ranch house windows. His movements were methodical, practiced, the actions of a man who'd fortified positions before. She brought him coffee, noting how he paused to scan the horizon before accepting the cup. Thank you, he said, his voice still rough with sleep. Your father's out checking the stock with Ben and Pete. They're good men, but they're not fighters. Sarah leaned against the porch rail, studying his profile. Ben's got a family in town. Pete's older than my father. I know. Jesse tested the shutter's strength. Already told them they're free to go. No shame in it. What did they say? A rare smile touched his lips. Pete said he'd been here since before you were born and wasn't about to let some jumped-up rustler run him off now. Ben said his kids would never forgive him if he abandoned the Whitmores. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. See decent men. The world's full of decent men. Miss Whitmore. Problem is, they're usually outnumbered by the other kind. They worked in companionable silence as the sun climbed higher. Jesse showed her how to position water barrels for fire prevention, where to stack ammunition for easy access, how to bar the doors properly. Sarah absorbed it all, trying not to think about why such knowledge was necessary. You've done this before, she observed, watching him calculate fields of fire from the windows. More times than I care to remember. Jesse's expression darkened. During the war, after the war, Seems like I've spent half my life getting ready for the next fight. Is that why you drift to avoid the fighting? He considered this. Maybe I drift because the fighting follows me anyway. Might as well see new country while I'm at it. Tom Whitmore returned near noon, dust-covered and grim. Move the breeding stock up to the Box Canyon. If things go bad, at least we'll have something to rebuild with. Smart. Jesse approved. What about supplies? Weeks' worth of food. Plenty of ammunition. Sarah, you remember where I keep the extra rifles? Yes, Papa? She touched his arm. We'll be ready. But ready was a relative term. As afternoon shadows lengthened, a rider approached under a white flag. Jesse recognized him as one of Red Jack's men, a thin, nervous type with darting eyes. Mr. Morrison wants to talk. The man called from a safe distance. Says he's willing to be reasonable. Tom started to respond, but Jesse stepped forward. Tell Morrison if he wants to talk, he can come himself. Tomorrow, noon, right here. He can bring 2 men, no more. The messenger nodded rapidly and wheeled his horse around. As he galloped away, Tom frowned. You think he'll come? He'll come. Men like Red Jack can't resist a chance to gloat. Jesse's eyes tracked the departing rider. But he won't come to talk. That evening, they gathered around the kitchen table for what might be their last peaceful meal together. Sarah had prepared her mother's pot roast recipe, the familiar smells filling the house with memories of better times. Even Jesse seemed to relax slightly, accepting a second helping with genuine appreciation. Best meal I've had in years, he said, causing Sarah to flush with pleasure. Our Sarah's the finest cook in the valley, Tom declared. Her mother taught her well before the fever took her. An awkward silence fell. Jesse cleared his throat. I'm sorry for your loss. 5 years ago now, Tom said quietly. Sarah's been the woman of the house since she was 17, never complained, never asked for anything for herself. Papa, please. Sarah busied herself clearing plates, uncomfortable with the direction of conversation. After supper, the men checked weapons and positions one more time while Sarah cleaned up. Through the window, she watched Jesse instructing Ben and Pete on crossfire techniques, his patience evident despite the gravity of their situation. Later, she found him alone on the porch, smoking a rare cigarette. The night was clear, stars brilliant in the Wyoming sky. Sarah settled beside him, maintaining a proper distance. Are you afraid? She asked softly. Fear's just another tool if you use it right. Jesse exhaled smoke into the darkness. Keeps you sharp, stops you from doing stupid things. I'm afraid, Sarah admitted. Not just of dying, of losing everything my parents built, of failing them. Jesse turned to look at her, moonlight catching the planes of his face. You haven't failed anyone. You did what needed doing. Found help when your father was too proud to ask for it. Some help. I brought 1 man against 30. Numbers aren't everything. His voice carried quiet conviction. I've seen a handful of determined defenders hold off armies. It's about will, positioning, and making the other side pay such a price they decide it's not worth it. Sarah hugged her knees to her chest. Tell me something about yourself, something that isn't about war or fighting. Jesse was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I had a sister once, Rebecca. She played piano, wanted to be a teacher. His voice roughened. Cholera took her while I was off playing soldier. 16 years old. I'm sorry. Long time ago. Jesse flicked the cigarette into the darkness. But sometimes, when I hear piano music, I still look for her. They sat in comfortable silence until the night grew cold. As Sarah rose to go inside, Jesse spoke again. Lock your door tonight. Keep your father's pistol close. You think they'll come in the dark? No. Red Jack wants an audience for whatever he's planning, but it pays to be careful. Sarah paused at the door. Jesse, thank you for everything. He touched his hat brim. Get some rest, Miss Whitmore. Tomorrow will be a long day. But sleep proved elusive. Sarah lay in her narrow bed, listening to the familiar creaks of the house, the distant howl of coyotes, somewhere in the darkness. Jessie was keeping watch, a guardian angel with a gun instead of wings. Dawn came too soon. Sarah rose and dressed carefully, choosing a practical split skirt that would allow her to move freely if needed. Downstairs, she found the men already assembled, faces grim but determined. "Sarah, I want you in the root cellar when they come." Her father began. "No." She met his eyes steadily. "This is my home too. Papa, I'll stand with you." "Sarah? She's earned the right to choose," Jessie interrupted quietly. "But Miss Whitmore, if shooting starts, you take cover, no heroics." The morning crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah helped serve breakfast, checked and rechecked the loads in her rifle, tried to keep her hands from shaking. At 11:30, Jessie positioned everyone, Tom and Ben at the front windows, Pete in the barn loft, himself on the porch where he could see all approaches. "Remember," he told them. "Let me do the talking. Nobody shoots unless they draw first." Noon arrived with a dust cloud on the horizon. Red Jack came as promised, flanked by 2 men. But Sarah's heart sank as she spotted more riders hanging back, at least 20 men, positioned just out of rifle range. "So much for 2 men," Tom muttered. "Expected as much," Jessie said calmly. He stepped off the porch as Red Jack dismounted, hands loose at his sides. Morrison had dressed for the occasion, black coat, silver-studded gun belt, boots polished to a high shine. He looked like what he was, a man who'd gotten rich through intimidation and violence. "Well, Calder, heard that name before. You're the one who cleaned out that nest of claim jumpers up in Montana." "Among other things. Impressive, but that was 5 against 1, and they were drunk." Red Jack smiled, showing gold teeth. "This is different." "Is it? I see a bunch of hired guns facing men defending their home. Seems familiar enough." Red Jack's smile faded. "I'm offering Whitmore one last chance. $500, and he can stay. Otherwise," he shrugged eloquently. "We don't have $500. Tom called from the window. "Then you have a problem." Red Jack's hand drifted toward his gun. "See, I can't let this disrespect stand. Bad for business." "Your business is done here," Jessie said. "Time to move on." "You seem mighty confident for a man facing 20 guns." 23. Jessie corrected mildly. "I counted, but here's what you haven't considered. Morrison, you kill us, you get a ranch. But how many of your men die taking it 5-10 and the survivors will want bigger shares?" He paused, letting that sink in. "Then there's the aftermath. Federal marshals tend to notice when entire families get massacred. Bad for business, like you said." Red Jack's eyes narrowed. "You threatening me with the law out here?" "I'm explaining economics. The cost versus the reward. Smart businessman like you should appreciate that." Sarah held her breath as the 2 men faced each other. The tension stretched between them like telegraph wire, humming with potential violence. Behind Red Jack, his men shifted nervously, no doubt calculating their own odds. Finally, Red Jack laughed, an ugly sound. "You've got sand. Calder, I'll give you that." His expression hardened. 3 days. Whitmore finds my money or burns. And I'll deal with personal." He turned on his heel and strode to his horse. As he mounted, he called back, "Enjoy your time, Miss Whitmore. Won't be many more sunsets for any of you." They watched the outlaws ride away, dust rising like smoke signals of war. Only when they were specks on the horizon did Sarah allow herself to breathe normally. "Well," Tom said heavily, "we've bought time, at least." "Time for what?" Ben asked. "We can't fight off that many men." Jessie was staring after the departed riders, expression thoughtful. "Maybe we don't have to. Pete, You know the country north of here pretty well. Like the back of my hand. Why? Because I need to know every canyon, every waterhole, every place a man might hide between here and the county line. Jesse turned to face them. We're not going to wait for Red Jack to come to us. We're going to make him chase shadows until he makes a mistake. That's crazy, Ben protested. 4 men against 23. 5, Sarah said firmly. 5 people who know this land against hired guns who don't. Jesse studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 5, then, Mr. Whitmore. How do you feel about taking the fight to them? Tom's weathered face split in a fierce grin. Son, I've been waiting for someone to suggest that for 2 years. As they gathered around the kitchen table to plan, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The fear remained, but alongside it grew something else: determination, purpose, and an awareness of the man beside her that had nothing to do with gunfighting skills. She caught Jesse watching her as she traced routes on her father's old survey map, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of partnership that went beyond their current crisis. Whatever happened in the coming days, she knew her life had changed the moment Jesse Calder walked into it. The sun was setting by the time they'd finalized their plans. As the others dispersed to prepare, Jesse caught Sarah's arm gently. You sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything. She met his eyes. This is our home. We'll fight for it. Jesse nodded, releasing her arm. Then we'd best get ready. Tomorrow, we take the war to Red Jack Morrison. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sarah felt the weight of coming violence, but also, surprisingly, a flicker of hope. They were outnumbered, outgunned, facing a ruthless enemy, but they had something Red Jack didn't: a cause worth fighting for and the will to see it through. The real battle for the Whitmore Ranch was about to begin. The attack came at Dry Creek Canyon just as the sun reached its zenith. Sarah had been riding point, her father's Winchester across her saddle, when the first shot cracked through the desert air. The bullet whined past her ear, and she threw herself from the saddle as Jesse's voice rang out. Canyon walls, take cover. More shots erupted from the rimrock above. Red Jack had chosen his ambush well. The narrow canyon forced them into a killing ground with precious little shelter. Sarah scrambled behind a cluster of boulders, her heart hammering as bullets chipped stone around her. Papa! She screamed, seeing her father's horse rear and dance. I'm all right. Tom Whitmore had made it to an outcropping 20 yards away, Ben beside him. Pete was nowhere to be seen, but his distinctive rifle crack from somewhere up the slope told her he'd found his own position. Jesse appeared beside her so suddenly she gasped. Blood ran from a graze on his cheek, but his eyes were focused, calculating. How many? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. 8, maybe 10. Red Jack's keeping his main force in reserve. Jesse peered around the boulder, ducked back as a bullet sparked off the stone. He's testing us. Some test, Sarah muttered, checking her rifle. Jesse actually smiled. You're doing fine. Keep low. Pick your shots. They have to come down eventually. The firefight stretched into an eternity of thunder and fear. Sarah forced herself to breathe, to aim, to squeeze the trigger like her father had taught her. She saw one of the ambushers jerk and fall. Couldn't tell if it was her shot or someone else's. Then she heard it, hoofbeats from the canyon mouth. The main force was coming. Jesse! She grabbed his arm. They're... I know. He was already moving, pulling her with him. New position. Now. They scrambled up a steep wash, using scrub brush for concealment. Behind them, Red Jack's men poured into the canyon like angry wasps. Sarah counted at least 15 riders, with Red Jack himself in the lead. Where's Whitmore? Morrison's voice echoed off the canyon walls. Find them. Jesse positioned Sarah behind a fallen cottonwood, then belly-crawled to a spot 10 feet away. When I start shooting, you run for that grove of junipers. Don't stop! Don't look back! I'm not leaving you. You're not. You're flanking them. His gray eyes met hers. Trust me. Before she could protest further, Jesse rose to one knee and opened fire. His Winchester spoke rapidly, methodically, and men tumbled from their saddles. Sarah ran, keeping low, reaching the junipers as return fire erupted. From her new position, she could see the whole battlefield. Her father and Ben were pinned down but holding, Pete's rifle still cracked from the heights. And Jesse was drawing most of the fire, moving constantly, never staying in one spot long enough to be targeted. Sarah took careful aim at a rider trying to flank her father's position. The man spun and fell. She worked the lever, found another target, fired again. This was nothing like shooting bottles or rabbits. These were men, and she was ending their lives. But they'd come to kill her family, and she pushed down any mercy. A scream made her turn. Ben was down, clutching his shoulder. Tom Whitmore broke cover to reach him, and Sarah watched in horror as Red Jack himself drew a bead on her father. Time slowed. She swung her rifle. Knowing she was too far, the angle was wrong, she'd never make it. The shot that saved Tom Whitmore's life came from Jesse. His bullet caught Red Jack's horse in the shoulder, sending the animal down in a thrashing heap. Morrison rolled clear, cursing, but the moment was lost. "Fall back!" Red Jack roared. "Fall back!" The outlaws retreated in disorder, dragging their wounded. Sarah stayed hidden until Jesse appeared at her elbow. "Good shooting," he said simply. "Your father?" "Alive, but Ben's hurt." They made their way carefully to where Tom crouched over the wounded ranch hand. Ben's face was pale, his shirt soaked with blood, but he managed a weak grin. "Still here, Miss Sarah. Take more than a scratch to put me down." Jesse examined the wound with practiced efficiency. "Through and through. Missed the bone. You're lucky, Ben." "Don't feel lucky," Ben gasped. Pete materialized from the rocks, rifle smoking. "Got 2 of them for certain, maybe a third." "We need to move," Jesse said. "Red Jack will regroup. Come at us harder. Can Ben ride?" "I'll tie him to the saddle if I have to," Tom said grimly. They fashioned a rough bandage and got Ben mounted. Sarah noticed Jesse favoring his left side and saw blood seeping through his shirt. "You're hit. Graze. I've had worse." Buddy let her help him into the saddle, and she felt the heat of fever already starting in his skin. They rode hard for the ranch, expecting pursuit that never came. Red Jack was licking his wounds, but Sarah knew it was only a reprieve. The real battle was yet to come. Back at the ranch, Sarah took charge. She sent Pete to town for the doctor, though she knew he might not come. Not with Red Jack's men controlling the roads. Her father she ordered to watch duties, ignoring his protests. That left her alone with Jesse and Ben in the kitchen-turned-surgery. She'd helped her mother tend injured ranch hands before, but never wounds this severe. "Ben first," Jesse insisted, slumped in a chair. "His is worse." Sarah cleaned and dressed Ben's shoulder, gave him whiskey for the pain, and got him settled in the spare room. Only then did she turn to Jesse. "Your turn. Shirt off." "I can manage." "Shirt off." Her tone brooked no argument. Jesse complied slowly, revealing a torso mapped with old scars and new damage. The bullet had carved a deep furrow along his ribs, still seeping blood, but it was the fever that worried her more. His skin burned under her fingers. "This needs stitching," she said, trying to keep her voice clinical. "Done it before. There's needle and thread in my saddlebags." Sarah fetched the items, along with the bottle of rye whiskey from her father's cabinet. Jesse took a long pull, then nodded for her to begin. She'd sewn plenty of things: clothes, leather, even helped stitch up horses. But sliding a needle through human flesh while its owner sat stoically drinking whiskey was entirely different. Jesse never flinched, though she saw his knuckles whiten on the bottle. Talk to me, she said, needing distraction from the horrible task. Tell me something. What do you want to know? Why you're doing this, really. It can't just be about decent men deserving help. Jesse was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, maybe I'm tired of seeing the Red Jacks of the world win. Maybe I figure if I help enough decent folks, it balances the ledger somehow. What ledger? The one we all carry. His voice was rough with pain and whiskey. Things we did, things we didn't do, people we saved, people we didn't. Sarah tied off the last stitch, began wrapping the bandage. You're a good man, Jesse called her. You don't know that. Yes, she said firmly. I do. Their eyes met and held. Something electric passed between them. Something that had nothing to do with gratitude or shared danger. Sarah felt herself leaning closer, saw Jesse's eyes darken. The door banged open. Tom Whitmore stood there, rifle in hand, face grim. Riders coming, lots of them. Jesse struggled to his feet, reaching for his shirt. Sarah helped him, trying to ignore the way her hands trembled. How many, Jesse asked. All of them. Looks like Red Jack's done playing games. They moved to the windows. In the fading light, Sarah could see the dust cloud approaching, her stomach clenched with fear. Pete's not back, she said. Ben can't fight. It's just the four of us. 3, Jesse corrected. Tom, get Sarah to the root cellar. No, Sarah planted herself firmly. We've been through this. I stay and fight. Sarah, please, her father began. No, this is my home too. My fight too. She looked between them, chin raised. I've proven I can handle myself. Jesse studied her for a long moment. All right, but you stay inside. Upper window. You'll have the best field of fire from there. Sarah hurried upstairs, her mother's rifle in hand, from the bedroom window. She could see Red Jack's men spreading out, surrounding the house. Her mouth went dry. There were so many. The attack began with fire arrows arcing through the twilight. Most fell short, but one lodged in the barn roof. Sarah heard her father curse, knew he was thinking of the horses inside. Then came the rush. Men on foot, using the gathering darkness as cover. Sarah forced herself to breathe, to aim, to fire. Reload, aim, fire. The rifle kicked against her shoulder again and again. Below, Jessie and her father turned the porch into a fortress. The steady crack of their rifles dropped attacker after attacker, but more kept coming. A crash from downstairs. They'd breached the back door. Sarah heard fighting, furniture breaking, her father shouting. She started for the stairs, then saw movement at her window. A man was on the roof, trying to get in. Sarah swung the rifle like a club, catching him in the face. He tumbled backward with a scream. More footsteps on the roof. They were being overrun. Sarah, Jessie's voice from below. Get down here. She flew down the stairs to find the kitchen in chaos. Her father was grappling with one outlaw while Jessie fought 2 more. Without thinking, Sarah grabbed the coffee pot from the stove and brought it down on an attacker's head. He dropped, howling. They fought with everything they had, guns, knives, furniture, fists. Sarah lost track of individual moments, existing in a blur of violence and desperation. Then, suddenly, it was over. The attackers retreated, leaving their dead and wounded. Sarah stood in the wreckage of her kitchen, shaking, covered in blood that might or might not be her own. Everyone all right? Jessie asked, leaning heavily against the wall. Still breathing, Tom panted. Sarah looked around at the devastation. Windows shattered, furniture destroyed, bullet holes everywhere, but they were alive. A voice from outside, Whitmore, you hearing me? Red Jack, still alive, unfortunately. I hear you. Tom called back. This can end right now. Send Calder out, and we ride away. You have my word. Sarah saw Jessie straighten, saw him start to move toward the door. She grabbed his arm. Don't you dare. It might be the only way. No. Her grip tightened. We don't sacrifice each other. We stand together or fall together. Tom Whitmore moved to the window. Go to hell. Morrison, nobody's going anywhere. Red Jack's laugh was ugly. Have it your way. We'll burn you out come morning. Enjoy your last night. They listened to the outlaws withdraw to a safe distance. In the sudden quiet, Sarah became aware of Jesse's labored breathing, the fresh blood on his bandages. You tore your stitches, she said. Notice that. She helped him to a chair, noting how heavily he leaned on her. Her father slumped at the table, looking every one of his years. We can't survive another attack like that, Tom said quietly. We won't have to. Jesse's voice was weakening, but his eyes remained sharp. Red Jack made a mistake. He's got them bunched up for the night, feeling safe. Pete knows these hills better than anyone. If he made it to town, you think he'll bring help? I think Pete's smart enough to know we need it. Jesse tried to stand. Swayed. Need to keep watch. They might... He collapsed. Sarah caught him, barely managing to ease him to the floor. Jesse, stay with me. His eyes fluttered open, focused on her face. Sarah, told you, no heroics. Shut up, she said through tears. Just shut up and breathe. She cradled his head in her lap, pressing her hand against the seeping wound. Her father brought water and the medical supplies. Together they worked to stop the bleeding, to bring down the fever. The night stretched endless. Sarah refused to leave Jesse's side, bathing his face with cool water, whispering prayers and promises and threats if he dared to die. Her father kept watch. Ben groaned in the next room, and somewhere in the darkness, Red Jack's men waited for dawn. Just before sunrise, Jesse's fever broke. His eyes opened, clear and aware. Sarah, I'm here. She smoothed his hair back, not caring that her father could see. You're going to be fine. And the attack hasn't come yet, but Jesse, she had to tell him. I don't want to die without... He pressed his fingers to her lips. You're not going to die. None of us are. You can't promise that. Watch me. Despite everything, he managed a smile. Besides, I need to see what happens next. What do you mean? But he was looking past her, out the window where the first light of dawn was breaking. Listen. Sarah heard it then. Horses, many horses, but not from Red Jack's camp. Pete, her father breathed. That clever old buzzard actually did it. The posse from town swept down like an avenging army. 20 men, led by a U.S. Marshal Pete had somehow located Red Jack's men, caught off guard and demoralized, scattered like quail. Sarah watched from the window as the law finally came to their valley. Some of the outlaws surrendered, others ran. Red Jack himself tried to flee but was brought down by the marshal's deputies not 100 yards from the house. It was over. Later. As the sun climbed toward noon, Sarah sat on the porch steps. The yard was full of lawmen, prisoners, and curious townspeople who'd ridden out to see the aftermath. Jesse sat beside her, bandaged and pale, but stubbornly upright. Quite a story, he said, watching the marshal lead Red Jack away in irons. Young woman saves her family ranch, helps capture a notorious outlaw gang. That's not the story, Sarah said softly. The story is about a woman who was ready to die for her home, but found a reason to live instead. Jesse turned to look at her. What reason is that? Sarah met his eyes, no longer afraid of what he might see there. I think you know. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm not an easy man. Sarah, I've got more past than future, more scars than dreams. I'm not asking for easy. She covered his hand with hers. I'm asking for real. Jesse turned his hand to interlace their fingers. Your father will come around. He's stubborn, not stupid. He knows what you did for us. And the town your reputation. Sarah laughed, surprising herself. My reputation was gone the moment I walked into the Silver Spur. Besides, she squeezed his hand, I don't want to be the perfect daughter forever. Cowboy. Jesse's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. No, I don't suppose you do. They sat together as the morning warmed around them, watching the dust settle on their small victory. The ranch was damaged but standing. Friends were wounded but healing. And somewhere between the violence and the survival, two people had found something worth fighting for besides land and principle. The war was over. Life, real life, was about to begin. The small room above Murphy's general store had become Sarah's world for the past week. She'd told her father she was helping Mrs. Murphy with inventory. But in truth, she spent her days tending to Jesse as he recovered from his wounds. The doctor had done what he could, but infection had set in. And for 3 terrifying days, Jesse had burned with fever. Now, finally, he was improving. Sarah wrung out a cloth in cool water and bathed his face, noting with relief that his skin no longer felt like fire under her touch. You should go home, Jesse murmured, his eyes still closed. Your father will worry. Papa thinks I'm organizing bolts of fabric. Sarah continued her ministrations. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't tear those stitches again. Jesse's lips curved in a weak smile. Stubborn woman. You're one to talk. He opened his eyes then, those gray depths focusing on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. Why are you really here? Sarah. She set the cloth aside, considering her words. Because when you collapsed in our kitchen, bleeding and burning with fever, I realized something. What? That I'd rather spend one day truly living with you than a lifetime of safe respectability without you. Jesse struggled to sit up, wincing at the movement. Sarah tried to push him back down, but he caught her hands in his. Sarah, you don't know what you're saying. I'm not. If you tell me one more time that you're not good enough, Jesse called her. I swear I'll shoot you myself. Her voice trembled with emotion. You risked your life for people you'd never met. You stood against 30 men for a principle. How is that not good enough? Because principles don't make a home. They don't provide stability or comfort or... I don't want comfort. The words burst from her with surprising force. I've had 22 years of comfort and safety and being the dutiful daughter. Do you know what that's like? Watching life happen through windows, always being what others expect. Jesse's hands tightened on hers. And you think life with a drifting gunman would be better? I think life with you would be real. Sarah pulled one hand free to touch his face. When you look at me, you don't see Tom Whitmore's daughter or the nice girl who makes the best preserves for the church social. You see me. Sarah. That day in the canyon, when Red Jack had us pinned down, I wasn't thinking about dying with my virtue intact or my reputation spotless. I was thinking about all the things I'd never done, never said, never felt because I was too busy being proper. Jesse caught her hand against his cheek, turning to press his lips to her palm. You deserve better than a man who brings violence wherever he goes. Stop! Sarah's voice was fierce. Stop deciding what I deserve. I'm not a child or a porcelain doll. I shot men to defend our home. I've sewn your flesh back together twice now. I think I've earned the right to choose my own path. They stared at each other, the small room charged with tension. Then Jesse pulled her closer, his hand tangling in her hair. God help me, he whispered. I've tried to stay away from you, tried to remember all the reasons this is wrong. But when you look at me like that... Like what? Like I'm worth saving. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You are. You saved us all, but you can't see that you're the one worth saving. Jesse drew her down until their foreheads touched. What do you want from me, Sarah? Everything, she breathed. Your past, your present, your future, your scars and your dreams. I want the man who checks the windows before he drinks coffee and the one who smiled when I said I wouldn't leave you. That's a lot to ask. I'm not asking. I'm offering the same in return. Jesse closed his eyes, and Sarah could see the war playing out across his features. Duty against desire. Fear against hope. Your father will never accept this, he said finally. He will, in time. Papa's proud, not foolish. He knows what we owe you. And the town will gossip for a while, then find something new to talk about. Jesse, she pulled back to meet his eyes. I'm not a child making a rash decision. I've had nothing but time to think these past days, watching you fight to live. And I know, with absolute certainty, that I'd rather face an uncertain future with you than a predictable one without you. Jesse studied her for a long moment, and Sarah saw the exact instant his resistance crumbled. His hand cupped her face with impossible gentleness. I'm not an easy man to love. Sarah Whitmore. Good thing I'm a stubborn woman, then. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face. That you are. The door burst open, making them spring apart. Tom Whitmore stood in the doorway, his face a mask of controlled fury. So, Mrs. Murphy finally told me where you've really been spending your days. Sarah stood, moving instinctively between her father and Jesse. Papa, please! Don't! Tom's voice was cold. 7 days. Sarah, 7 days of lies while the whole town talks about how my daughter is nursing the gunslinger above the general store. I couldn't let him die. He has his own people to tend him. He has no one. Sarah's voice broke. No one but us, the family he saved. Tom's jaw worked. I'm grateful for what he did. I've said as much. But gratitude doesn't mean I'll stand by while my daughter ruins herself. Jesse had managed to sit up fully, his face pale but determined. Mr. Whitmore, if you'll let me, I'll not listen to anything you have to say. Calder, you've done enough. Tom turned back to Sarah. Get your things. You're coming home. No. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Tom's face darkened further. What did you say? I said no. Sarah lifted her chin. I'm not a child anymore. Papa, you can't order me about like one of the ranch hands. While you live under my roof, then maybe it's time I didn't. The silence that followed was deafening. Tom looked as if she'd slapped him. You'd choose him over your own family. I'm not choosing anyone over anyone. Tears ran down Sarah's face, but her voice remained steady. I'm choosing to live my own life. I love you, Papa. I always will. But I can't be your little girl forever. Tom turned his gaze to Jesse, and Sarah saw her father's hand twitch toward his absent gun. This is your doing, filling her head with notions. No. Jesse's voice was quiet but firm. This is Sarah's doing. Her choice, her strength. I've done nothing but try to talk her out of it. Not hard enough, apparently. Jesse met the older man's glare without flinching. Mr. Whitmore, I respect you. You're a good man, a good father, but Sarah's right, she's not a child. She's a woman who saved my life more than once, who stood against armed men without flinching. Maybe it's time you saw her as she is, not as you wish she'd stay. Don't you dare lecture me about my own daughter. Papa, stop. Sarah moved to stand beside Jesse, not quite touching but clearly allied. This isn't about Jesse. It's about me, about the life I want to live. I've spent 22 years being exactly what you and Mama wanted me to be. I don't regret it. It made me who I am. But now I need to be who I'm meant to become. Tom's shoulders sagged. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked old. Your mother would be heartbroken. No, Sarah said gently. Mama would understand. She followed you out here when everyone said it was foolish. Didn't she left everything safe and known for an uncertain future with the man she loved? That was different. How? Tom had no answer for that. He stood in the doorway. A man caught between love and tradition, between protecting his daughter and letting her go. Finally, He spoke. "If you leave with him, Sarah, don't come back. I won't have the town saying I condone this. Love," Sarah suggested quietly. "Is that such a terrible thing, Papa, that your daughter found someone worth loving?" Tom flinched. Without another word, he turned and left, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Sarah sank onto the edge of Jesse's bed, shaking. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her against his side despite the obvious pain it caused him. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly. "Your father will come around, or he won't." Sarah wiped her tears. "But I won't live my life based on his approval anymore." "Where will you go?" "Mrs. Murphy offered me a room and work in the store. It's a start." Jesse was quiet for a moment. Then, "When I'm healed, I was thinking of heading north. There's a town in Montana looking for a sheriff. Steady work, decent pay. A place a man might settle down." Sarah turned to look at him. "Are you asking me to come with you?" "I'm saying that if a man were to settle down, he'd be a fool not to want someone like you beside him. But Sarah, we should do this proper. Courthouse, preacher, whatever you want. I won't have anyone saying I ruined you." "Let them say what they want." But she smiled through her tears. "Though I wouldn't say no to making it official. Mrs. Murphy would be scandalized otherwise." Jessie touched her face, thumb brushing away a tear. "I'm sorry. About your father." "He'll realize eventually that you're the best thing that ever happened to me. And if he doesn't—" Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Then that's his loss." Over the next days, Sarah moved her few belongings into the small room Mrs. Murphy provided. The town gossips had a field day, but she found unexpected allies too. Ben Carter, recovered from his wound, stopped by to shake Jesse's hand and offer his support. Pete came by with stories and whiskey, declaring that any man who'd stand against Red Jack's gang was good enough for the Whitmores. Even some of the town women, after the initial shock, began to nod approvingly. After all, Sarah Whitmore had helped capture an outlaw gang. Perhaps she'd earned the right to make her own choices. Jesse healed slowly but steadily under Sarah's care. They spent long hours talking about his past, her dreams, their possible future. Sarah discovered that beneath the gunfighter exterior was a man who quoted poetry, who'd once wanted to be a teacher before the war changed everything. "My sister would have liked you," he said one evening as Sarah helped him walk around the room, rebuilding his strength. "She always said I needed someone who wouldn't let me brood." "Smart woman." Sarah steadied him as he swayed slightly. "Though I suspect you'll still brood sometimes. It seems to be part of your charm." "My charm?" Jesse raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware I had any." "Oh, you have your moments. The strong, silent type appeals to some women." "Just some—" Sarah pretended to consider. "Well, I suppose the way you handle a Winchester doesn't hurt. And there's something about a man who faces down 30 outlaws for principle's sake." Jesse pulled her closer, his strength returning day by day. "And here I thought it was my conversation skills." "Those too," Sarah murmured, then lost her words as he kissed her. It was different from the desperate kiss they'd shared during the battle. Slower, deeper, full of promise rather than fear. When they parted, both were breathless. "We should wait," Jesse said, though his arms didn't loosen. "Until we're married, I want to do right by you." "You already have." But Sarah stepped back, recognizing the wisdom in his words. "Though I hope you heal quickly. Mr. Calder, patience has never been my strongest virtue." Jesse's laugh was rich and genuine. "Mine either. Miss Whitmore, mine either." A week later, Tom Whitmore appeared at the store. Sarah was arranging a display of fabrics when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up to see her father standing uncertainly in the doorway, hat in hand. "Papa." "Sarah." He cleared his throat. That is, the ranch seems mighty quiet without you." I'm sure you're managing fine. We are. Ben's back to full strength. Pete's ornery as ever. He twisted his hat brim. But it's not the same. Sarah waited, knowing her father well enough to let him find his own words. I've been thinking about what you said, about your mother. Tom's voice roughened. You're right. She did follow me out here against everyone's advice. Her parents didn't speak to her for 2 years. I didn't know that. We didn't talk about it much, but I remember how it hurt her, being cut off from family. He looked up at her then. I don't want that for us. Sarah. Hope bloomed in her chest. Neither do I. This Calder fellow, Jesse, he's really what you want. He is. Tom nodded slowly. Then I suppose I should get to know him better. Man saves your life. Least you can do is share a meal with him. Sarah flew across the store to embrace her father. Thank you, Papa. He hugged her back, his arms strong and familiar. I'm not saying I like it, but you're my daughter, Sarah. Nothing changes that. I love you, Papa. Love you too, girl. Always have, always will. He pulled back to look at her. Now, where's this fellow of yours if he's going to be family? We need to have a talk about his intentions. Sarah laughed through her tears. He's upstairs, but Papa, be gentle. He's still recovering from saving our lives. Tom's mouth quirked. I'll keep that in mind. As Sarah led her father upstairs, she felt something settle into place. The wound between them wasn't fully healed. That would take time, but it was a start, and, in this hard country, sometimes a start was all you needed. She opened the door to find Jesse dressed and sitting at the small table, as if he'd been expecting this visit. The two men regarded each other warily. Mr. Whitmore, Jesse said, rising carefully. Calder. Tom hesitated, then extended his hand. Seems we have some things to discuss. Jesse shook the offered hand firmly. Yes, sir, I believe we do. Sarah looked between them, her past and her future, finding a way to coexist, outside the window. Silver Creek went about its business, unaware that in this small room above the general store, lives were being rewoven. The conversation that followed was awkward, stilted at times. But it was a beginning, and as Sarah served coffee and watched the two most important men in her life slowly find common ground, she knew she'd made the right choice. Love wasn't always easy in this wild land. But then again, nothing worthwhile ever was. The truth about Sheriff Daniels came to light on a Tuesday afternoon when Sarah was helping Mrs. Murphy inventory the new shipment from Denver. Jesse had been up and about for nearly 2 weeks now, spending his days at the livery stable, slowly rebuilding his strength by tending horses. It was Ben Carter who burst through the store's door, face flushed with urgency. Miss Sarah, where's Jesse? At the stable. Why? Red Jacks escaped. Killed 2 guards and rode out last night. But that ain't the worst of it. Sarah's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Papers were found in the sheriff's office. Daniels has been taking bribes from Red Jack for months. The whole time we were fighting for our lives, he was feeding information to Morrison's gang. Mrs. Murphy gasped. Sarah felt the floor shift beneath her feet. Sheriff Daniels, the man who'd sworn to protect Silver Creek, who'd attended church with them, who'd tipped his hat to her mother every Sunday. Does my father know? He's the one who found the papers, was looking for property records and stumbled on them hidden in a false drawer. Ben's expression was grim. Your PA and Pete are gathering folks at the town hall. This goes deeper than just Daniels. Sarah didn't wait to hear more. She ran through the streets, her skirts kicking up dust, until she reached the livery stable. Jesse was in the back stall, brushing down a mare, but he looked up sharply at her approach. What's wrong? She told him quickly, watching his face harden with each word, without speaking. He set aside the brush and reached for his gun belt hanging on a peg. Jesse, you're not fully healed. Healed enough. He checked his Colt with practiced efficiency. Red Jack won't run far. He's got unfinished business here." They hurried to the town hall, where angry voices spilled into the street. Inside, Tom Whitmore stood before a crowd of 30 or more citizens, the damning papers spread on a table before him. "Been selling us out for months," Tom was saying. "Every ranch that got hit, every shipment that got robbed, Daniels knew about it in advance." "Where's the yellow dog?" someone shouted. "Disappeared same time as Red Jack." Pete answered, "But his deputy's locked up in his own jail, singing like a canary." Mayor Henderson, a portly man who usually avoided controversy, stepped forward nervously. "Now, folks, let's not do anything rash. We need to contact the federal marshals." "Federal marshals are 3 days away," Jesse interrupted, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Red Jack won't wait that long." "What do you suggest?" "Mr. Calder." The mayor looked relieved to have someone else take charge. "Form a posse. Track them before the trail goes cold." Jesse's gray eyes swept the room. "But understand, this won't be like before. Red Jack's desperate now, and desperate men are the most dangerous." "I'm in," Tom Whitmore said immediately. "And me," Pete added. Others volunteered, ranchers who'd suffered losses, townsmen tired of living in fear. Within an hour, 15 men were assembled, armed and mounted. Sarah stood beside her father's horse, trying not to show her fear. "You be careful," she told him, then turned to Jesse. "Both of you." Jesse leaned down from his saddle. "Keep your rifle close. If Red Jack doubles back—" "I know." She touched his hand briefly. "Come back to me." "Count on it." The posse rode out as the sun peaked overhead. Sarah watched until they were dust specks on the horizon, then returned to the store. "Mrs." Murphy tried to keep her busy, but her thoughts remained with the riders. It was near sunset when young Tim Patterson came running. "Miss Sarah Ryder's coming in fast." Sarah grabbed her rifle and rushed outside. But it wasn't the posse. It was a single rider on a lathered horse. As he drew closer, she recognized him as Jack Teller from the Box T Ranch, 10 miles north. "Indians!" he gasped, sliding from his saddle. "Apache war party hit us at dawn. My wife, my children." His voice broke. Sarah's heart sank. Apache raids had been rare lately, but if a war party was moving through— "How many misses?" Murphy asked, her face pale. 20, maybe more. They burned the house, took the livestock." Teller accepted the water Sarah offered. "I rode to warn folks. They're heading this way." Panic rippled through the gathering crowd. With most of the able-bodied men gone with the posse, Silver Creek was virtually defenseless. "We need to fort up," Sarah said, surprising herself with her steady voice. "Gather everyone in the most defensible buildings." "Who put you in charge, Missy?" demanded Harold Crenshaw. "The banker." "Do you have a better idea?" Sarah shot back. "Because if you do, now's the time." Crenshaw subsided, and Sarah took control. She organized the women and children into the Stone Bank building, the most solid structure in town. The few remaining men took positions at windows with what weapons they could find. "Mrs. Murphy, do you still have that shotgun under your counter?" "Never without it, dear." "Good. Mary," she addressed the blacksmith's wife. "Your husband keeps rifles in the shop. Doesn't he get them?" As darkness fell, Sarah positioned herself on the bank's roof with 3 other defenders. The town was eerily quiet, waiting. Then they heard it, the thunder of hooves from the north. "Here they come," someone whispered. But something was wrong. Sarah squinted into the gloom, then gasped, "Those aren't Indians!" The riders swept into town with torches blazing, Red Jack Morrison and what remained of his gang. Maybe a dozen men. They'd used Teller's story as cover for their attack. "Clever," Sarah muttered, then shouted, "It's Red Jack, open fire!" The night exploded in gunfire. Sarah worked her rifle mechanically, picking targets, trying not to think about how outnumbered they were. Below, she heard glass breaking, women screaming. A rider with a torch headed for the general store. Sarah dropped him, but another took his place. Fire began licking at the wooden buildings. In minutes, half the town would be ablaze. Then, cutting through the chaos, came the sweetest sound she'd ever heard. A rebel yell that could only belong to Pete, followed by the thunder of the returning posse. Jessie and her father had somehow gotten behind Red Jack's men. The outlaws, caught between two forces, milled in confusion. Sarah saw Jessie vault from his moving horse onto an outlaw, driving the man from his saddle. Even wounded, he moved with deadly grace. The battle was fierce but brief. Trapped and outnumbered now, some outlaws threw down their weapons. Others tried to flee. Red Jack himself spurred toward the edge of town, but Tom Whitmore's lasso caught him clean, yanking him to the ground. As quickly as it had begun, it was over. Sarah climbed down from the roof on shaking legs. The fire at the general store had been contained, though smoke still billowed into the night sky. She found Jessie leaning against a water trough, blood seeping through his shirt. "You're hurt." "Old wound opened up. I'm fine." But he swayed as he said it. "Stubborn man." She slipped under his arm, supporting him. "What happened? How did you know to come back?" "Found Teller's family." Tom Whitmore approached, his face grim. "Hiding in their root cellar, scared but alive. No Apache war party, just Red Jack's men in war paint, trying to scare them off. We realized it was a trick," Jessie added. "Rode hard to get back." Sheriff Daniels was brought in an hour later, caught trying to cross the county line with saddlebags full of money. The sight of the lawman in shackles seemed to shake something loose in the town spirit. "We need a new sheriff," Mayor Henderson announced unnecessarily. "I nominate Jessie Calder," Tom Whitmore said loudly. A chorus of agreement rose from the crowd. Jessie looked stunned. "I'm no lawman," he protested. "You're honest and you're good with a gun," Pete said. "That's more than we've had in years." Sarah squeezed his hand. "It's a chance to stop drifting," she said quietly. "To build something instead of just defending it." Jessie looked down at her, then around at the faces of the townspeople, people who'd fought beside him, who were offering him not just a job, but a place to belong. "All right," he said finally, "but only until you can find someone permanent." The cheer that went up suggested permanent might be longer than he expected. Later, in the quiet of Mrs. Murphy's parlor, Sarah tended Jessie's reopened wound while the town celebrated outside. The danger had passed. The corrupt were in custody, and Silver Creek had survived. "You know what this means," Jessie said as she worked. "A sheriff needs to be respectable, have a proper house, a proper life." "How very proper you sound." Sarah tied off the bandage. "I suppose this means you'll need a proper wife, too." "I suppose it does." He caught her hand. "Sarah Whitmore. I should have asked this sooner, but things kept getting in the way. Will you?" "Yes." Jessie blinked. "I haven't finished asking." "Oh." Sarah blushed. "Go ahead, then." Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the chaos of the day, Jessie laughed. "Will you marry me, you impossible, wonderful woman?" "Yes," Sarah said again, this time letting him finish. "Though I should warn you, I'm not very good at being proper." "Good. Proper is overrated." He pulled her close. "I love you, Sarah. Have since you walked into that saloon demanding someone face down Red Jack's gang." "I love you too, even if you are a stubborn, brooding gunfighter with more scars than sense." "Former gunfighter," Jessie corrected. "Now I'm a respectable sheriff." "Temporary sheriff. We'll see about that." Outside, someone started playing a fiddle, and voices raised in celebration. The town that had nearly burned would rebuild, stronger than before. The people who'd cowered under corruption had found their courage. And in a small room above a general store, Two people who'd found each other through violence and adversity began planning a future built on something infinitely more powerful: hope, trust, and the kind of love that could weather any storm the frontier might bring. Tom Whitmore's voice drifted up from the street. "Where's my daughter? Someone needs to tell her she's marrying the new sheriff." Sarah laughed against Jesse's shoulder. "I think he's coming around to the idea." "Your father's a good man, just protective of what he loves." "I understand the feeling," Sarah said, tracing the edge of his bandage. "Jesse, promise me something." "Anything. No more getting shot. Sheriff or not, I'm tired of patching holes in you." Jesse's smile was warm with promise. "I'll do my best. Future Mrs. Calder, I'll do my best." As if in agreement, the church bells began to ring, not in alarm this time, but in celebration. Silver Creek had faced its darkest night and emerged into a new dawn. And for two souls who'd found each other against all odds, that dawn promised something neither had dared dream of: a chance at happiness, earned through courage, sacrifice, and the unshakable belief that love was worth any risk. The Wild West was still wild, still dangerous, but it was also a place where people could remake themselves, where second chances bloomed like desert flowers after rain. And sometimes, in the midst of all that wildness, two hearts could find their way home. The storm rolled in from the mountains like God's own fury. Sarah pressed her face to the window of the sheriff's office, watching lightning split the sky above Silver Creek. It had been 3 weeks since Jesse accepted the badge. 3 weeks of relative peace that now felt like the calm before devastation. "Ryder's coming," Jesse said from behind her, already reaching for his gun belt. Through the rain, Sarah could make out a group of horsemen, at least 20, maybe more. Her heart sank as she recognized the lead figure. Not Red Jack this time, but something potentially worse: Colonel Marcus Webb, the territorial governor's special investigator. "You know him?" Sarah asked, noting the tension in Jesse's shoulders. "By reputation. He's the kind of lawman who sees guilt wherever he looks and isn't particular about proof." Jesse checked his Colt. "Stay here." "Jesse, please, Sarah, this could go bad fast." She watched from the window as Jesse stepped into the storm to meet Webb. The colonel was a thin, sharp-featured man who remained mounted, forcing Jesse to look up at him, a deliberate power play. "Sheriff Calder," Webb's voice carried despite the rain. "I'm here investigating reports of vigilante justice and corruption in Silver Creek." "The corruption's in jail awaiting trial," Jesse replied evenly. "As for vigilante justice, we defended ourselves against outlaws, all legal. That's to be determined. I'll need to question everyone involved, starting with the Whitmores." Webb's smile was cold. "I understand you have a personal interest there." Sarah's hands clenched. She knew that tone, the implication that Jesse's relationship with her had influenced his actions, that perhaps the whole thing was less about justice and more about impressing a woman. Jesse's voice remained calm, but Sarah heard the steel beneath. "Question whoever you need. We've got nothing to hide." "We'll see about that. My men will be taking over the jail. You're relieved of duty pending investigation." "On whose authority?" "The governor's." Webb produced a paper from his coat. "As of now, I'm the law in Silver Creek." Sarah saw Jesse's hand twitch toward his gun. Then still, he was outnumbered 20-1, and Webb was technically within his rights. Jesse handed over his badge without a word and walked back through the rain. "Pack what you need," he told Sarah as he entered. "We're going to your father's ranch." "Jesse, what's happening?" "Webb's not here for justice. Someone's pulling strings. Maybe remnants of Red Jack's gang. Maybe someone else who profited from the corruption." He pulled her close, rain still dripping from his hat. "This is going to get ugly before it gets better." They rode through the storm to the Whitmore ranch, finding Tom and the hands already alerted. Pete had seen Webb's men coming and spread the word. "They're saying we murdered those outlaws," Tom said grimly as they gathered in the kitchen. That we took the law into our own hands. In a way, we did, Jesse said. But we had cause. The question is whether Webb cares about cause or just about making examples. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sarah opened it to find Mary Patterson, the blacksmith's wife, soaked and trembling. "They've arrested Ben Carter," she gasped. "And Dr. Holcomb, and 3 others who rode with the posse. They're talking about hanging—" Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "On what charges?" "Murder, conspiracy, theft of outlaw property." Mary accepted the blanket Sarah wrapped around her. "Colonel Webb says he's cleaning up the territory, starting with Silver Creek." Jesse stood abruptly. "I'm going back." "Like hell you are," Tom said. "You walk into town now, you'll be arrested too." "Better me than Ben. He's got children." "And what good will you do them from a noose?" Pete asked bluntly. "Boy, use your head. Webb's got legal authority and military backing. We need to be smart about this." Sarah watched Jesse struggle with his instincts. Every fiber of his being wanted to act, to protect those who'd stood with them. But Pete was right. Charging in would only give Webb what he wanted. "There might be another way," she said slowly. "Webb's here on the governor's authority, but the governor answers to Washington. And I happen to know that Senator Morrison, no relation to Red Jack, has been looking into territorial corruption." "How do you know that?" her father asked. Sarah flushed slightly. "I may have written to him. After everything that happened, I thought someone should know the truth about what we faced." Jesse stared at her. "You wrote to a United States senator?" 3 letters, actually, very detailed ones." She lifted her chin defiantly. "Someone had to document what happened here. I didn't trust it to remain just local record." "Despite everything," Jesse smiled, "have I mentioned lately that you're remarkable?" "It won't help if Webb moves fast," Tom pointed out. "Telegraph to Washington and back takes days." "Then we slow him down," Jesse said. "Sarah, can you reach Mrs. Murphy? If Webb's occupying the jail, he'll need supplies, food, ammunition, other goods. And Mrs. Murphy controls most of the supply chain," Sarah finished. "She could have terrible trouble with her inventory. Shipments could go missing, prices could become complicated." "That's my devious girl, Pete. You know every rancher in 50 miles. How many owe us favors?" Pete grinned. "More than a few? You thinking what I think you're thinking?" "Webb can't hang men without a trial. For a trial, he needs a judge. Judge Hartford rides circuit. He's not due for 3 weeks. But if he happened to hear about the situation—" "I know where he is," Pete said. 2 days' ride, if a man pushed hard." "Go, Tom. We need to make Webb stay here as uncomfortable as legally possible. No violence. Nothing he can arrest us for, but Wyoming hospitality can be mighty cold when it wants to be." Tom finished. "I'll spread the word." They dispersed into the storm with purpose. Sarah rode back to town alone. Despite Jesse's protests, she found Mrs. Murphy already implementing her own resistance. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Colonel," the elderly woman was saying to a frustrated soldier. "But without proper requisition forms, in triplicate, of course, I simply can't release military supplies. Town ordinance, you understand?" Sarah hid her smile and slipped upstairs to her old room. From her small desk, she penned another letter to Senator Morrison, detailing Webb's arrival and actions. Then, because desperate times called for desperate measures, she wrote to someone else, Elizabeth Stanton, the women's suffrage activist who'd passed through Silver Creek the previous year and stayed at their ranch. If they were going to fight Webb, they'd need all the allies they could get. The next days were a delicate dance of resistance. The town, united in their distrust of Webb, made his investigation monumentally difficult. Witnesses developed terrible memory problems. Documents went missing. Horses came up lame just when Webb's men needed them most. But Webb wasn't stupid. On the fourth day, he arrested Jesse. Sarah was in the general store when she heard. She ran into the street to see Jesse being marched to jail, hands bound, Webb following with obvious satisfaction. "Jesse Calder," Webb announced loudly. "You're under arrest for murder, conspiracy, and impersonating a lawman." "He was duly appointed," Sarah shouted. Webb turned his cold gaze on her. "By a town council with no legal authority to do so. Miss Whitmore, isn't it you'd best be careful? Aiding and abetting is also a crime." Sarah met his stare without flinching. "Then arrest me too. I aided and abetted everything Jesse did, and I'd do it again." "Sarah, no," Jesse said sharply. But Webb just smiled. "Not yet. Miss Whitmore, ladies first is for dancing, not hanging. Your time will come." They locked Jesse in his own jail, now under military guard. Sarah was barred from seeing him, but she could see his cell window from her room above the store. That night, she saw him standing there, and they shared a long look across the distance. "Don't give up," she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear her. "We won't let them take you." The next morning brought unexpected hope. A cavalry unit arrived, not more of Webb's men, but federal troops under Captain James Lincoln, a man Jesse apparently knew from the war. "Calder," Lincoln said, ignoring Webb's protests as he entered the jail. "Heard you were in trouble." "Jim," Jesse gripped the bars. "What are you doing here?" Funny thing about telegraph lines. Sometimes they carry messages to unexpected places, like to my commander, who happens to be very interested in territorial corruption. Lincoln turned to Webb. "Colonel, I'll need to see your orders. This is my investigation, which now falls under federal oversight." Lincoln's smile was sharp. "Seems some very influential people have questions about your methods." Sarah's letters had found their mark. What followed was a tense standoff. Webb had legal authority, but Lincoln had federal backing. Neither could act without the other's cooperation. It bought them time. But Jesse remained imprisoned. On the seventh night, Sarah made a decision. She gathered rope from the store, darkened her face with coal dust, and slipped through the streets to the jail. The guard was one of Webb's men, but he was also young and bored, paying more attention to his flask than his duty. Sarah had learned much in the past weeks, moving silently. She approached from his blind side and brought a piece of firewood down on his head. He slumped unconscious. The keys were easy to find. Jesse looked up as she entered, his eyes widening. "Sarah, what are you—" "Rescuing you. What does it look like?" She unlocked his cell. "There are horses waiting at the grove. We can be in Mexico in a week." "Sarah?" Jesse took her shoulders gently. "I can't run. That would make me guilty in truth." "Better guilty and alive than innocent and hanged." "Is that what you want, a life running, always looking over our shoulders?" He cupped her face. "That's not the future I promised you." "I don't care about the future. I care about you." "And I care about justice, about doing this right." He kissed her forehead. "Lock the cell, put the keys back, go home." "Jesse." "Trust me, Sarah, please." Tears streaming. Sarah did as he asked. As she relocked the cell, Jesse caught her hand through the bars. "Whatever happens, know this, you gave me something to fight for besides survival. You gave me hope." "Don't talk like you're saying goodbye." "I'm saying I love you. Always remember that." Sarah fled before her resolve weakened. The next morning, the guard had a headache and a wild story about being attacked, but nothing could be proven. That afternoon, Judge Hartford arrived, a day early, thanks to Pete's persuasion, and with him came someone else, Senator Morrison himself, accompanied by a federal prosecutor. The trial that followed was unlike anything Silver Creek had ever seen. Webb presented his case with cold efficiency: the deaths of outlaws, the seizure of their property, the appointment of an unqualified sheriff. But then the defense began, one by one. The people of Silver Creek testified about Red Jack's reign of terror, about Sheriff Daniel's corruption, about the night they thought they'd all die until Jesse and the posse returned. Sarah testified last, her voice clear and unwavering as she described everything from that first meeting in the saloon to the final battle. When Webb tried to suggest her testimony was biased by emotion, she met his gaze steadily. Yes, I loved Jesse Calder, but I loved my home first. I loved the principle that good people shouldn't have to bow to evil men. Jesse stood for that principle when no one else would. If that's a crime, then we're all guilty. The judge's decision came at sunset. Not guilty on all charges. The crowd erupted in cheers as Jesse was released. He pushed through the throng to reach Sarah, lifting her off her feet in an embrace that set tongues wagging and hearts singing. "It's over," Sarah breathed against his neck. "No," Jesse set her down, his eyes bright with promise. "It's just beginning." Senator Morrison approached them. "Mr. Calder, I'm impressed by what I've seen here. The territory needs men like you. I'd like to recommend you for official appointment as sheriff, with full federal backing." Jesse looked at Sarah, a question in his eyes. She nodded, smiling through her tears. "I accept," Jesse said, "on one condition. I'll need a few days off first." "Oh, why's that?" Jesse took Sarah's hand. "Because I'm getting married. Senator, can't keep a good woman waiting any longer." The cheer that went up could likely be heard in the next county. Even Tom Whitmore was smiling, and Pete actually threw his hat in the air. As the stars came out over Silver Creek, Sarah stood in Jesse's arms, watching their neighbors celebrate. They'd won more than a legal victory. They'd proven that courage and principle could triumph over corruption and fear. "No regrets?" Jesse asked softly. Sarah thought of all that had passed. The danger, the fear, the moments when death seemed certain. Then she thought of this, standing with the man she loved, surrounded by people who'd fought for what was right, under the vast Wyoming sky. "Not one," she said, and meant it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The West was still wild, still dangerous. But tonight, they'd won. And sometimes, in this hard land, victory was sweeter for being so dearly bought. The storm had passed. In its wake, new growth was already beginning. The morning sun painted Silver Creek in shades of gold and promise. 1 year had passed since Jesse Calder had faced down Red Jack Morrison, since corruption had been rooted out, since a town had found its courage again. Now, Sarah stood in the small house she shared with Jesse at the edge of town, her hand resting on the subtle swell of her belly. "You're up early," Jesse said from the doorway, already dressed for his morning rounds. "Couldn't sleep. The baby's been dancing all night." Sarah turned to smile at him. "I think we might have another fighter on our hands." Jesse crossed to her, placing his hand over hers. "Or maybe a dancer could take after your mother's grace instead of our stubbornness." "Our stubbornness has served us well," Sarah reminded him. Through the window, they could see the changes that had come to Silver Creek. New buildings rose where fire had claimed the old. The school had been expanded. Families who'd fled during Red Jack's reign had returned, bringing new life and hope. "Pete's coming for supper tonight," Sarah said, "and Papa mentioned he might stop by." "Your father's been stopping by a lot lately." Jesse's eyes crinkled with amusement. "I think he's more excited about the baby than we are." A knock at the door interrupted them. Jesse found young Tim Patterson on their porch, breathless from running. "Sheriff, there's trouble at the Murphy store. Mrs. Murphy says come quick." Jesse grabbed his hat and gun belt. Sarah reached for her shawl. "Sarah, no, don't even start. Jesse Calder, I'm pregnant, not invalid." They found a crowd gathered outside the general store. Mrs. Murphy stood on the porch, wielding her broom like a weapon, facing down 3 rough-looking strangers. "I said we're closed," the elderly woman declared. "Come back when you've learned some manners." "Now, old woman," one of the men growled. "We just want supplies. No need to be unfriendly. Jesse pushed through the crowd, badge glinting in the morning sun. Problem here, Mrs. Murphy. These gentlemen seem to think they can help themselves to whatever they want. Knocked over my pickle barrel and tracked mud all through the store. The leader of the three turned to face Jesse, and Sarah saw her husband's hand move subtly toward his gun. There was something in the stranger's eyes, a deadness that spoke of violence as casual as breathing. "Sheriff," the man said, making the title sound like an insult. "We're just passing through, no need for trouble." "Then pay for what you damaged and move on," Jesse said evenly. "Pay?" The man laughed. "For a few pickles, I don't think so." The crowd tensed. Sarah recognized the signs, hands moving to weapons, women pulling children back. The peace they'd fought for balanced on a knife's edge. Then Tom Whitmore stepped out of the crowd, followed by Pete and Ben Carter. "Seems like you boys don't understand how we do things in Silver Creek," Tom said. "When the sheriff speaks, we listen." The three strangers found themselves facing not just one man with a badge, but an entire town that had learned to stand together. The leader's eyes darted around, calculating odds. "This ain't worth it," one of his companions muttered. The leader spat in the dust. "Fine. What do we owe for the pickles?" $2. "Mrs." Murphy said promptly. "Plus another $1 for the cleanup." Highway robbery for pickles, but the man threw the coins at her feet. "There's your money. Happy now?" "Delighted, Mrs." Murphy said dryly. As the strangers mounted their horses, the leader looked back at Jesse. "You've got a nice little town here, Sheriff. Be a shame if something happened to it." They rode out, leaving dust and unease in their wake. Jesse watched until they were out of sight, then turned to the crowd. "Ben, Pete, I want you to spread the word. Everyone stays alert for the next few days. Those men weren't just drifters." "You think they'll be back?" Tom asked. "I think they were scouting, testing our response." Jesse's jaw tightened. "We've had a year of peace. Some folks might think that's made us soft." That evening, their small house was full of warmth and laughter despite the day's tensions. Pete regaled them with stories of his younger days. Tom argued good-naturedly about cattle prices, and Sarah felt the baby kick as if joining the conversation. "Have you thought of names?" Pete asked, helping himself to another serving of Sarah's pot roast. "If it's a boy, Jesse wants to call him Michael, after his brother who died in the war." Sarah said, "If it's a girl." "Rebecca," Jesse finished softly. "After my sister." Tom cleared his throat, suddenly gruff. "Fine names, both of them. Your mother would have been pleased." "Sarah." Later, after their guests had gone, Jesse and Sarah sat on their porch watching the stars. The night was peaceful, but Jesse's hand rested on his gun, and Sarah knew his mind was on those three strangers. "They'll be back, won't they?" she asked. "Maybe, or maybe they'll decide Silver Creek isn't worth the trouble." He pulled her closer. "Either way, we'll be ready." "I'm not afraid," Sarah said, and meant it. "We've faced worse." "That we have." Jesse's hand found her belly again. "But now we have more to protect." The attack came 3 nights later. Sarah woke to the sound of breaking glass and Jesse's voice shouting orders. He was already up, strapping on his gun belt in the darkness. "Stay here," he commanded. "Bar the door behind me." But even as he spoke, orange light flickered through their windows. Fire. The strangers had returned with friends. And they were burning Silver Creek. Sarah dressed quickly, ignoring Jesse's orders to stay put. She'd hidden a rifle under their bed for just such an emergency. Pregnant or not, she wouldn't cower while her town burned. The scene outside was chaos. At least a dozen raiders galloped through the streets, torches in hand, firing at anyone who showed themselves. But Silver Creek had learned its lessons well. From windows and rooftops, the townspeople fought back. Sarah saw Mrs. Murphy on her store's porch, calmly loading her shotgun. Ben Carter and his oldest son defended the bank. And there was Jesse, standing in the middle of Main Street like an avenging angel, his guns speaking death to any raider who came too close. A rider charged toward their house, torch raised. Sarah stepped onto the porch, raised her rifle, and fired. The man tumbled from his saddle, his torch guttering out in the dust. "That's my girl," Pete's voice called out. The old hand was positioned on the livery stable roof, picking off raiders with methodical precision. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The surviving raiders fled into the night, leaving their dead behind. Jesse found Sarah on their porch, rifle still smoking. His face was a mask of fury and fear. "I told you to stay inside and let them burn our home, our town." Sarah lifted her chin defiantly. "I think not. Sheriff Calder—" For a moment, they stared at each other. Then Jesse pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he'd never let go. "You impossible woman," he murmured into her hair. "What am I going to do with you?" "Love me," Sarah suggested, "and accept that I'll always stand beside you, no matter what." The damage was less than feared. 2 buildings had caught fire but were saved by the town's new fire brigade. 3 townspeople were wounded, none seriously. Of the raiders, 5 were dead and 2 captured. Dawn found the town gathering in the street, faces grim but determined. Mayor Henderson, still in his nightshirt, addressed the crowd. "This is the 2nd time in a year we've been attacked. Some might say it's time to give up, to move somewhere safer." "Like hell," someone shouted, and others voiced agreement. Tom Whitmore stepped forward. "My daughter and son-in-law have shown us what courage looks like. I say we show these outlaws that Silver Creek doesn't bow to anyone." A cheer went up. Jesse raised his hand for quiet. "The men we captured will face trial. Word will spread that Silver Creek defends its own, but we need to do more. I'm proposing we form a permanent militia, train regularly, make sure we're never caught off guard again." "I'll help train them," Pete offered. "Still remember a thing or two from my army days. And I'll organize the women." "Mrs.," Murphy added. "We've proven we can shoot as well as any man." Sarah felt a surge of pride. This was what they'd built, not just a town, but a community that refused to be broken. Over the following weeks, Silver Creek transformed. The militia trained daily. Watchtowers were built at the town's borders. The railroad company, impressed by the town's spirit, announced plans to extend a spur line to Silver Creek, ensuring prosperity. One evening, as Sarah watched Jesse teaching a group of young men defensive shooting, Dr. Holcomb approached her. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Calder? The baby should be coming soon." "Any day now." Sarah placed a hand on her belly. "I just hope he or she waits until after the Harvest Festival." The doctor chuckled. "Babies have their own schedules, but don't worry, this child will be born into a strong community. We've all made sure of that." The Harvest Festival arrived with perfect autumn weather. The town square filled with booths and music. Children ran laughing through the streets where gunfire had echoed months before. Sarah, despite being heavily pregnant, had helped organize the event and moved through the crowd accepting congratulations and well wishes. As the sun set, Jesse found her sitting on a bench, watching couples dance to fiddle music. "Care to dance, Mrs. Calder?" "I'm not sure I can manage it in my condition." "Then we'll sway." He helped her to her feet, holding her gently as they moved to the music. "Look at what we've built," Sarah murmured, gazing around at their neighbors, their friends, their town. "A year ago, this seemed impossible." "Nothing's impossible when people stand together." Jesse spun her slowly. "You taught me that." As if in response to the moment, Sarah gasped, "Jesse, I think the baby's coming." The next hours blurred together. the rush to their house. Dr. Holcomb arriving, Mrs. Murphy and other women gathering to help. Jesse paced outside like a caged wolf while Tom Whitmore tried unsuccessfully to calm him. "I've faced down outlaws and corrupt lawmen," Jesse muttered, "but this is the most natural thing in the world," Tom said, though his own hands shook as he poured whiskey. "Sarah's strong. She'll be fine." Dawn was breaking when a baby's cry pierced the air. Jesse burst through the door to find Sarah holding a small bundle, her face exhausted but radiant. "Come meet your daughter," she whispered. Jesse approached as if in a dream. The baby was perfect, tiny fists waving, dark hair like her mother's, and when she opened her eyes, they were gray like his. "Rebecca," he breathed. "Rebecca," Sarah called her. "She's beautiful," Sarah said, then smiled. "And probably stubborn as both her parents." Jesse kissed his wife's forehead, then his daughter's. "She'll need to be. This is still wild country." "But it's our country," Sarah said. "Our home, our future." As the sun rose over Silver Creek, painting the sky in shades of hope, Jesse and Sarah held their daughter and each other. Outside, the town was waking up. Shops opening, children heading to school, life continuing as it always did. They had started with violence and mistrust. They had walked through fire and emerged stronger. Now, with a new life in their arms and a community at their backs, they faced the future without fear. The West was still wild, still challenging, but here in Silver Creek, love had tamed the wilderness just enough to let dreams take root and grow. Sarah looked at Jesse, saw the wonder in his eyes as he gazed at their daughter, and knew that every risk, every moment of danger, had been worth it for this. "I love you," she whispered. "And I love you," he replied. "Both of you, forever." Baby Rebecca yawned, already comfortable in her father's arms. Outside, Pete's voice could be heard greeting the morning, Tom Whitmore's laughter echoing from the porch. Mrs. Murphy was probably already opening her store, ready to face whatever the day might bring. This was family. This was home. This was the life they'd fought for and won. And in the wild beauty of the Wyoming morning, with endless sky above and solid ground below, Sarah knew that their story, begun in desperation and forged in courage, would continue through their daughter and beyond. The West would always be wild, but love, real love, was stronger than any storm. From the ashes of the old, they had built something new and lasting, and that, Sarah thought as she drifted off to sleep with her family around her, was the greatest victory of all. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope it touched your heart as much as it did mine. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please leave a comment below and share your thoughts about Sarah and Jesse's journey. If you enjoyed this tale of courage, love, and redemption in the American frontier, please subscribe to Wild West Night for more authentic Western stories. Don't forget to hit that like button and press the hype button to help more people discover this story. Your support means everything and helps keep these tales of the Old West alive. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward your own sunrise.